From me to you. In May 2024, as high school students, we had the opportunity to speak with Sachiko Matsuo, an egg survivor. She began to tell us about that frightful summer day. On that day, 79 years ago, I was 11 years old and in the fifth grade. My father, mother, three sisters, six brothers, eight relatives, and myself, a total of 20 people, lived in the biggest house in my town. Our house was a farmhouse. The whole family grew rice and vegetables in our fields, located in various places. My father worked driving a horse-drawn wagon to transport goods and was president of the town council. In addition to that, he was also a firefighter. At that time, I was a fifth grader attending Yamazato National School. Air-raid alarms were sounding daily in Nagasaki. I could only attend school until June, and when I was in school, I was not taught to study, but to lie on the ground with my eyes and ears covered to protect myself. This posture was intended to prevent the eardrums from rupturing, so that the eyeballs do not pop out when a bomb exploded. On August 6, an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima by an American bomber airplane, the B-29, killing about 140,000 people. There was very big damage. One day later, on the 7th, paper notices were scattered all over Nagasaki by a B-29. These notices said, on August 8, Nagasaki will become a city of ashes. My father believed the paper notice and built a hut out of metal plates in our field. On the morning of the 8th, we left our house and headed for the mountain fields. We spent the whole day in the hut. Nothing happened that night either, so we assumed the paper was a lie, and we went home the next day. On the morning of the 9th, my grandmother and mother said, "Today is already the 9th. That paper was a lie. Let's not go to the huts again today." Then my father said, "America is a day behind. So definitely we stay up on that mountain through the end of today." Hearing those words, we decided to go to the fields. We climbed the mountain with an emergency bag containing food and valuables. We had 8 boys and 4 girls, with one brother strapped on his mother's back as we worked up a difficult path on that mountain. It was a very hot day, so my brothers and I were in the hut in our underwear when we got to the field. I'm trying to hide the contents of my emergency bag. What medicines did they bring today? I was suddenly surrounded by a flash, white and yellow light. A few seconds later, there was a loud bang, and instantly it went dark. The town of Nagasaki was immediately reduced to ashes. Later, it gradually became lighter from high above. My mother had hit her face on a post, and her eyes immediately swelled up, and she lost her sight. The second brother had a cut on the back of his neck from a metal plate. The wound was wide open and something white was visible. On this day, we were spending time with all three of our relatives' children. Two of them had burns all over their bodies and kept crying. Nagasaki was destroyed by an atomic bomb dropped by B-29s, which obliterated buildings and blew away the leaves of the natural trees. In an instant, Nagasaki became a hellhole. Another airplane flew low over our heads several times. When I saw it, I got in the stance I had been taught in school and waited for it to pass by. I couldn't wait until it was completely gone, so I saw where the plane was flying. The plane had two men on it, and they were looking down at the streets of Nagasaki. After a while, to see what was going on down the mountain, my mother carried my injured brother with her 2-year-old on her back down the mountain. My mother soon returned. A little further down the mountain, my mother had met a badly burned mother with her 5 children. At first, I didn't realize who the person was. But then that person spoke to my mother, who realized it was someone she was close to. The woman said to my mother, "We're on our way to the mountains. I want you to bring me some rainwater from over there to drink." And my mother gave that mother only water and returned to our place. Around 3 o'clock, a person working unsteadily with a cane approached us. The person was covered in dirt all over, with clothes wrapped around his head and hands, and his clothes were badly torn. At first, I didn't know who it was, but upon closer inspection, it was my father. I was very happy and shouted, "Mom, Dad is home!" The family gathered and cried continuously because we were so happy. My mother said, "You, you, I thought you were dead. I'm glad you're alive. This is really good." My father seemed to think that we were dead because we had told him we were not going to the mountain in the morning. My father was in an office only 800 meters away from where the atomic bomb exploded in Nagasaki. When he regained consciousness, he was trapped under a 2-story wooden building. Someone helped him to get out. When he finally got out from under the rubble, he was shocked to see how Nagasaki had changed. There had been many factories in the area. He saw a new gas tank that was all bent and crushed. Dad told us he felt sick because he breathed in gas from the crushed tank. Later, we learned it was not from the gas, but being exposed to radiation 800 meters from where the bomb exploded. One evening, after the big explosion in Nagasaki, our family members who weren't at home when the bomb exploded came to the mountain where we were hiding. They had been looking for people who survived and had a sad story to tell us. They found some people in the air raid shelter, and those people told them what happened to our family. We learned that many of our loved ones were hurt or missing. Our big sister and our brother's wife didn't survive. One of our brothers came home hurt from his job, but another brother was still missing. Our aunt was saved from a collapsed house, but she was battery hot. She tried to get medical help at the hospital for a way, but she didn't get better. As I listened to this news about our family, I felt so shocked and sad that I couldn't even cry. It was hard to believe all these terrible things had happened to the people we loved.
The night time that should have been dark turned bright red with fire. From the mountain where we were, we could see the whole city burning. My grandmother was watching something that was especially meaningful to her. It was the church that she and my grandfather had walked in for 15 years. She kept crying, "The church is burning! The church is burning!" It seems like grandmother had more sadness about the church burning than about losing family members. Maybe the church had a special significance to her that was not clear to me. That night, none of us could sleep. We watched the red sky and thought about all that had happened. The fire made everything so bright and scary. We stayed awake all night. The next morning on August 10th, our older cousins took us down the mountain. As we walked, I saw something very scary for the first time. Dead bodies. I still remember how frightened I felt. When we reached the bottom, Nagasaki looked very different. The whole city was covered in white ash. In the ash, we could see many bones. It was a very disturbing sight. Near where the bomb fell, many people were hiding in air-raid shelter. These shelters were very crowded. As we walked through the city, I saw many people who were hurt and dying, and it left me with great anguish. I was also very hungry because I hadn't eaten since August 9th. Just then, a train came by with food. I got a rice bowl with one pickle plant inside. It wasn't much, but it helped me feel a little better. This had been a very difficult day. On August 15th, we heard that the war was over. I believed it right away. Some of our relatives who lived far from where the bomb fell came to get us in a horse cart. They lived about 7 kilometers away from the center of the explosion. The owner of their house was very kind and gave us a lot of food. For the first time in a long while, I could eat until I was full. We went to stay with our old relatives on August 15th, but my father couldn't come with us. He had an important job in our old town, so he had to stay there. About a week later, my father came to us on a small cart. He was very sick, with a high fever, a bad stomach, and spots on his skin. Every day, I walked to the hospital and asked the doctor to help my father. The doctor gave him medicine, but my father didn't get better. My father was in a lot of pain. On August 28th, he died. That was when I finally displayed extreme sadness. I cried loudly for the first time, since everything had happened. A few months later, the elderly woman who owned the house where we were staying, started to ask my mother, "When will you send the children back to school?" She asked this every time she saw my mother. But we couldn't go to school because we didn't have clothes to wear or books and notebooks to use. The next spring, my mother built us a simple house. After that, I started going to school again as a fifth grader. Our school building was in bad shape. When it rained, water would leak inside. It was hard to study properly. We didn't have shoes to wear at school, so we went barefoot. Even though school was difficult, none of us wanted to go home. Many of us didn't have families to go back to, so we felt lonely. We liked being together at school with our friends. When I went back to school, I noticed there weren't as many students as before. At first, I thought everyone was still living far away because their homes were destroyed. But that wasn't the real reason. Many years later, when I was grown up, I went to a memorial service 50 years after the bomb fell. I learned something very sad. Out of 1,500 students from our school, 1,300 had died because of the bomb. I found out that in all of Nagasaki, out of every 4 people had died. It was a terrible loss. When I learned this, I cried a lot. I felt very sad, but I also felt I had an important job to do. As someone who survived, I needed to tell others what happened. At first, it was hard to talk about what happened after the bomb exploded. When I tried, I would remember the sad times and start crying. I couldn't tell the story well, but I knew it was important to keep trying. I wanted people to know what happened so that it would never happen again. One day, a doctor said to me, "I feel sorry for you." This was because I kept getting sick with illnesses that I didn't have names. The doctor couldn't explain why I was always sick. I think it's because there's still radiation in my body from the bomb. Even now, this radiation makes me feel bad sometimes. There were many other sad things that happened because of the war. If I hadn't been in Nagasaki that day, I wouldn't have gone through all of this. Miss Matsuo expressed her belief to us after our talk. We must never go to war again. We must never repeat that mistake. You should become very knowledgeable about nuclear weapons. When you become adults and can vote, choose politicians who solve problems through discussion, not war. Discussion is the most important way to solve problems. Our happiness helps to define who we are. You can't become happy by leaving it to others. It is important to study and make our own choices. Since experiencing the world, I have realized how important my family is to me. It is because of my family that I am alive today. I am here because of the help I have received from many. I want you all to be in a country without war. Eliminate war and nuclear weapons from the world. I do not want future generations to experience the same suffering. Today, you can wear clothes that you choose and have any hairstyle you want. But during the war, we couldn't. Please cherish the happiness you have now. Continue to protect your daily life.